want you to picture a scenario, and it's painfully relatable, whether you've been the one holding the clicker or, the one just sitting in the uncomfortable swivel chair.
Oh, yeah, we've all been there.
Right. So you are 22 minutes into a presentation in this high-stakes conference room, and you have just clicked over to slide 14.
Ah, the infamous slide 14. That is exactly where presenter confidence usually goes to die.
It really is, because it is a technical masterpiece. And by masterpiece, I mean it's a system architecture diagram
Correct.
crammed with, like, 11 boxes, 9 intersecting arrows, 3 different color codes.
And a legend's so dense, you basically need a magnifying glass to read it.
Exactly. And as this slide materializes on the screen, you watch the chief operating officer, who's sitting right there in the front row, subtly slide her laptop open.
Oof. The worst feeling.
She's completely checked out. And the presenter sees it happen, panics, and immediately starts talking faster. Like they just throw more words at the problem, hoping pure velocity will somehow, reel her back in.
Which ironically creates this massive wall of sound that actually accelerates the audience's disengagement. They just tune out faster.
Completely. Well, welcome to our deep dive. Our mission today is to really crack the code on how to command a room during complex technical presentations.
It's such a crucial skill.
It is. And our source material today is this fascinating, highly practical script from episode 11 of the Sharp English program. It features hosts Marcus and Zara, and the whole program focuses on high-value corporate English.
Right, specifically looking at the strategic language moves you need to keep an audience leaning in, regardless of how incredibly dense the material gets.
Yeah, so to start, we should probably establish a baseline here.
Yeah.
The source points out that when a technical pitch fails in a corporate environment, it is almost never because of a lack of preparation or, technical competence.
No, the presenter usually knows the material intimately. I mean, they live and breathe this stuff. The breakdown happens because the audience is experiencing information rather than expertise.
Okay, that distinction feels really crucial because information is, it's passive, right?
Exactly. It's just data points, architecture diagrams, and metrics just floating on a screen.
But expertise implies, active curation. It requires a human guide to contextualize that data, assign it some stakes, and really filter out the noise for the audience.
Because raw data simply does not command a room on its own. It needs translation.
Right.
Without that human filter, an executive looking at an 11-box diagram isn't seeing a brilliant solution. They're just seeing a massive cognitive burden.
Which is why this matters so much for you listening. Because whether you are presenting to global cross-functional teams or defending a massive capital expenditure, or even speaking in a second language where structural clarity is your absolute strongest asset.
These specific linguistic framing tools will completely change your trajectory.
But before we get to the actual vocabulary, we need to examine the specific environment that breaks most presenters. The source script calls it the mixed room dilemma.
Oh, the mixed room is the ultimate test of corporate communication.
It sounds terrifying.
It is. The source outlines a very standard scenario. So imagine you are a lead solutions architect pitching a 40-minute cloud migration proposal.
Okay.
And your audience includes your chief technology officer, 2 non-technical client executives who actually control the funding, and 6 members of your own engineering team who know the intimate, granular details of the current system.
Wow. Talk about an asymmetric information dynamic. It's like trying to give driving directions to 2 completely different people at the exact same time.
That is a perfect way to put it.
Right. Because the CTO and the engineers, they want the longitude and latitude coordinates of every single turn. But the non-technical executives just want to know, is there going to be traffic on the highway?
Yeah, and you can't read both maps simultaneously without confusing someone. If you speak at the highly granular level of the engineering team, the commercial executives completely lose the thread.
And they withhold the budget.
Exactly. But if you strip away the nuance to satisfy the executives, well, then you lose the respect and credibility of your technical peers.
And human nature dictates that under pressure, we default to speaking to the most intimidating people in the room.
Always. The source actually shares this highly instructive anecdote from Zara about this exact tension. She was pitching a data infrastructure proposal to a room that was split perfectly between hardcore engineers and commercial leads.
And she admitted she built the entire deck for the engineers.
Yeah, she did. She understood their language better. And frankly, she was just more afraid of their technical judgment than the commercial lead's confusion. It was basically an act of status preservation.
But the commercial cost of that status preservation was huge. I mean, 15 minutes into her presentation, the commercial leads began exhibiting that, that polite, rhythmic nodding.
Oh, the slow nod where the eyes slightly unfocus.
Yes, where nobody is actually processing a single word. And she recognized she was losing them, but she just kept pushing through the technical data anyway.
Because she didn't have the tools to pivot. And the fallout wasn't just a bad meeting. It cost her 3 weeks of stalled momentum and 2 incredibly painful, repetitive follow-up meetings just to secure the initial approval.
And the crazy part is, the technical work itself was flawless. Zara's proposal was totally structurally sound.
Right. The failure happened entirely at the bridge between her work and the audience.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second. It feels like being asked to cook a single dinner that perfectly satisfies both a Michelin star food critic and a extremely picky 5-year-old.
That's tough.
Is the work itself the problem, or is it just the delivery?
It is almost never the work. The job isn't just displaying the technical reality. The real job is constructing the bridge so everyone can cross it together.
Which brings us to the actual mechanics of building that bridge.
Yeah.
If the core risk is that half the audience gets lost on the journey, we have to give them the map before we even start the engine.
Yes. And the sharp English script refers to this as their phrase of the week. It completely upends conventional presentation training.
I love this part. So before you show a single slide, before you even open your deck, you look directly at the room and deliver this specific sentence. You say, before I get into the detail, here is the one thing I need you to walk away with.
We really need to look at the cognitive priming happening with that specific phrasing.
It's powerful.
You are literally giving away the conclusion before the presentation even begins. You are handing them the destination up front.
Which feels, honestly, completely counterintuitive to how we are traditionally taught to present. Like, from high school onward, we are trained to build a thesis, lay out a sequence of supporting evidence, and then deliver this grand climactic reveal at the very end.
Right, but a corporate boardroom is not a movie theater. Suspense in a business context rarely generates excitement. It just generates anxiety.
Because executives spend their whole days mitigating risk.
Exactly. Hiding the answer forces them to spend mental energy guessing where you are taking them. Giving away the conclusion at the absolute beginning signals profound confidence.
You're essentially telling the room, like, my underlying logic is so bulletproof that I can give you the punchline right now, and all the data will still hold up.
And it respects their cognitive bandwidth. Every dense architecture diagram or complex metric that follows that opening sentence now has a designated filing cabinet in their brain.
Because you've given them the conclusion, which acts as the map. The rest of the presentation is just the territory. They never have to wonder why they're looking at a specific data point.
It fundamentally alters the power dynamic of the entire room. It shifts the audience from being passive, anxious observers trying to decipher your goal into active participants watching you construct a proof for a conclusion they already possess.
Okay, but the danger of giving away that conclusion so early is that the room might assume, well, they don't need to pay attention to the heavy math that proves it, right?
That is a risk, yes.
Because eventually you still have to put that dreaded slide 14 on the screen. How do you transition into the dense technical territory without the executives just taking it as an invitation to check their emails?
You have to jolt their reticular activating system.
The what?
It's the part of the brain that notices new things. See, most people transition into data with phrases that practically induce a coma.
Oh, like moving on to the architecture diagram, or now I'm going to walk you through the system flow.
Exactly. Those phrases are audio cues that literally signal the brain to power down. They just blend into the drone of corporate speak.
So what's the alternative?
The source script provides a behavioral pattern interrupt instead. To transition into complex data, you just say, here's where it gets interesting.
Oh, wow. It's a linguistic spike.
Precisely. What's fascinating here is that the brain is hardwired to respond to novelty and narrative cues. When you say, here's where it gets interesting, it completely breaks the predictable rhythm.
It commands the audience to wake up.
Yes. It generates a sudden expectation of discovery, and that expectation creates sharp, focused attention. You suddenly sound like a human guide revealing a secret, rather than just a narrator reading a script.
But immediately after you generate that attention, you click the remote, and that terrifying slide with 11 boxes pops up.
Right. You still have to show the monster slide.
So to manage the inevitable shock of that visual, the source offers another really crucial mechanism. You say, let me show you this in layers, starting with the part that affects you most.
That phrase is an absolute masterclass in managing cognitive load.
Okay, but wait, let me play devil's advocate here. If I have to explicitly tell an audience, let me show you this in layers, doesn't that inherently mean my slide is terribly designed?
That's a fair question.
Shouldn't I just make a simpler slide instead of relying on a fancy phrase to excuse a bad one?
That critique makes perfect sense in a vacuum, but it ignores the reality of the mixed room we talked about. In highly technical fields, the complexity must exist. It's not an accident.
Right, the engineers need the detail.
Exactly. That slide with 11 boxes and 9 arrows. The senior engineers in the room actually require all 11 boxes to verify that your proposed migration won't crash their current servers. You cannot delete the complexity just to make the visual more palatable for the COO.
So the density of the information is non-negotiable.
It is, but by utilizing the phrase, let me show you this in layers, starting with the part that affects you most, you are actively triaging the executive's cognitive load before they feel overwhelmed.
You are signaling, I know this looks intimidating, do not panic. I am going to curate this experience for you.
Yes, it's an exercise in empathy. You're effectively saying, look at this one specific box in the top left corner. The other 10 boxes are for the engineering team, and we will get to them. But you have permission to ignore that noise for right now.
You are establishing psychological safety.
Yeah.
Just pointing out the first layer and keeping them anchored.
Exactly.
But eventually, even with that guidance, the room will go quiet. And silence during a dense technical presentation is it's a terrifying metric.
It really is. How do you actually know if they are following the layers, or if they are just employing that polite, rhythmic nodding Zara encountered?
Well, this touches on the asymmetric information dynamics again. As the presenter, you have to check the room's temperature, but the specific words you use determine whether you get a genuine response or just a defensive wall.
The default for almost everyone is, does everyone follow? Or are there any questions?
And the source script points out that those are catastrophic choices.
Why?
Because they carry a massive social cost. In a room filled with senior staff, asking a question can feel like a confession of ignorance. When a presenter asks any questions, the implicit translation is, did anyone fail to grasp my perfectly articulated explanation?
It totally corners them. I mean, if I'm a commercial executive sitting next to the lead engineers, I'm not going to raise my hand and admit I don't understand the API protocol.
Nobody wants to look dumb. It diminishes your perceived competence.
So the phrase you must substitute when the room goes quiet is, I want to pause here and check, what questions does this raise for you? Yes, that subtle shift completely removes the social friction. It alters the premise entirely.
Because it assumes that questions are a natural, inevitable byproduct of engaging with dense material.
Exactly. It normalizes curiosity and removes the embarrassment factor. It implies that intelligent people should have questions prompted by this data.
It provides the commercial executives with professional cover. I love that.
It really does.
So once you have successfully checked in and ensured the room is still with you, we encounter a concept from the source that leverages deep behavioral psychology. The Sharp English hosts reference this Stanford Communication Lab study.
Oh, the study is fascinating.
It notes that audiences remember stories at a rate 22 times higher than they remember uncontextualized data. 22 times.
That multiple sounds hyperbolic until you look at how the brain actually processes information. When we hear raw statistics, only our language processing centers activate to decode the words.
Just the language centers.
Right. But when data is embedded in a narrative, it activates the sensory cortex and the motor cortex. The brain essentially lights up, creating multiple neural pathways to the same piece of information.
So data without a narrative structure has no friction. It just slides right out of our short-term memory.
Precisely. And the source provides a direct linguistic tool to capitalize on this. When introducing a crucial metric, instead of just displaying the number, you frame it by saying, this is the number that changed how we thought about this.
You are assigning a narrative arc to a static number before you even reveal what the number is.
You're signaling to the room that this specific data point challenged your assumptions, which primes them to be surprised as well.
I can hear the resistance from technical listeners right now, though. Like, if I am standing in front of a room of hardcore back-end developers, the idea of talking about how we thought or our feelings about the data might backfire.
That is a very accurate cultural read.
Highly technical cultures often prioritize brutal directness over narrative framing. They just want the raw data.
They want the payload, not the poetry. But the source material accounts for this exact scenario with a really brilliant structural inversion. The underlying principle that data must never float without context remains absolute.
So what do you do?
You simply invert the delivery sequence. Deliver the raw fact first, followed immediately by the context.
Ah, okay. Give the fact, then the narrative.
Right. Instead of leading with the narrative hook, you drop the heavy metric first. You say, capacity ceiling is hitting 60% load, which is why this changes our approach.
You satisfy their demand for raw data instantly, but you still seamlessly attach the narrative consequence a millisecond later.
The data still gets an anchor.
Perfect. So we have established the map, we navigated the complex visual layers, and we anchored the data with narrative.
Yeah.
But a corporate presentation without a business outcome is just expensive theater, right?
Absolutely. The ultimate objective is to compel the room to make a decision based on the expertise you just shared.
Which brings us to the most critical transition of the entire presentation, building the final bridge. The source script flags this as the single highest value phrase they teach.
It is the most important one.
Whenever you present a technical finding, you must immediately follow it with, what this means for the business is...
Please. And the reason technical presenters routinely omit this step is due to the curse of knowledge. When you live inside a technical ecosystem, the business implications of a failing system seem blindingly obvious to you.
So you assume the audience is making the same connections.
But they are not. The source illustrates this with API response times. If you announce to the room, our API response time is averaging 1.4 seconds under peak load, the engineers in the room will instantly recognize a crisis.
But the chief operating officer hears 1.4 seconds and thinks, wow, that sounds incredibly fast.
Exactly. The data alone fails to translate the urgency. That metric is a technical reality, but it lacks a commercial reality.
But if you append the translation phrase and state, our API response time is averaging 1.4 seconds. What this means for the business is that 1 in 6 customer transactions is timing out and failing during our most profitable hours. You instantly command the COO's attention.
Building that translation bridge from technical reality to commercial consequence is not an optional enhancement. It is the fundamental job of the presenter.
And to maintain that authority as you build that bridge, Marcus and Zara emphasize that there are specific phrases you must violently excise from your vocabulary.
Phrases to ban.
Yes. If you want to retain command, you can never look at the screen and say, as you can see on this slide.
Ugh. It acts as an audio filler that subtly degrades your status. I mean, if the audience can actually see it, your narration provides zero additive value.
You relegate yourself to the role of a voiceover artist rather than a strategic guide.
And the most egregious offense is saying, I know this slide is a bit busy, but...
I've heard that so many times.
We all have. But that phrase is a preemptive admission of negligence. You are explicitly telling the room, I am aware that I am subjecting you to a hostile cognitive experience, but I chose not to invest the effort to curate it.
It immediately erodes trust. You never apologize for your visuals. You utilize the, let me show you this in layers technique instead.
Exactly.
So we've guided them through the complexity, we've translated the technical data into business impact, and we're approaching the final moments of the allotted 40 minutes. How do you stick the landing without losing all that momentum?
Well, the most prevalent and honestly damaging mistake presenters make is concluding with a generic summary slide. Or, even worse, that monolithic question slide, featuring a stock photo of 2 people shaking hands.
Oh, we have all sat through that anticlimactic fade-out.
It creates a dangerous decision vacuum. If you simply summarize the past 40 minutes, say thank you, and open the floor, you completely abdicate control of the room's momentum.
And corporate environments are naturally resistant to sudden decisions anyway.
Right. If you leave a vacuum at the end of a pitch, executives will default to the safest possible action, which is deferral. They will say, let's take this offline and review the deck.
Which is corporate code for prepare for 3 weeks of follow-up emails.
Exactly. So to force a resolution, you must close with this precise framework. You say, the decision in front of us is, and here is my recommendation.
So like the decision in front of us is whether to authorize the cloud migration this quarter or risk holiday season outages, and here's my recommendation.
Yes. You are actively naming the friction point. You are crystallizing the abstract technical data into a binary choice, and you are taking a definitive stance.
You walk them across the bridge, and now you are telling them exactly what direction to face now that they are on the other side.
By forcing the choice, you prevent that deferral loop and dramatically increase the probability of securing a decision before anyone even leaves the room.
That structural control is incredibly empowering. Which brings us to the challenge for you, the listener. for the very next presentation you give, or maybe the one you are currently outlining on your secondary monitor right now. Before you open your presentation software, before you line a single box, write down this exact sentence. Here is the one thing I need my audience to walk away with.
And build your entire narrative architecture around justifying that single sentence.
Exactly. Then identify the single most complex, overwhelming data point in your material. Right, let me show you this in layers next to it and figure out exactly what the very first layer needs to be for the least technical person sitting in that room. Start there.
And as you begin to deploy these linguistic tools, I want to leave you with one final, deeply provocative thought to mull over.
Let's hear it.
If these specific curated phrases are so profoundly effective at managing an audience's psychology, if they can lower cognitive load, eliminate social embarrassment, and corner executive decision-making, at what point does mastering a technical presentation stop being an evaluation of your technical skills and become entirely an exercise in behavioral psychology?
Wow.
Because it forces us to ask, if you maintain absolute control over a room's attention and emotional friction, do you functionally control the truth of the data?
That is an intense paradigm shift to consider. The next time you click over to slide 14, remember, they aren't actually judging your data. They are waiting for you to step up and be their guide. Keep diving deep into the things that matter.